Hi, Dr. Maury, Uncivilized Vitality. This will be a short video explaining more about what uncivilized vitality is a little bit. I'm going to come at it from a slightly different way. I was just talking with someone about my book, and a patient was picking the book up, and they're like, well, what is uncivilized vitality? And the quick answer is a health and happiness optimization program. So I based the advice in the book or the program to optimize your health and happiness on the sort of a factor analysis of the habits of pre-civilized and extant hunter-gatherer populations in the world and kind of what they do to stay happy and healthy without the trappings of civilization. And then that requires explaining what civilization is. And I've used my BSO theory in the book, where individual living organisms run from the cell all the way up to ecosystem, and they're organized from cell to tissue to organs, organ systems, the organism, and then organisms interact in the large ecosystem. And then on the sociological end, for biosociological organization, you have the individual, and the individual is arranged in units all the way up to a functioning human society. The individual, the family, communities, cultures and subcultures, and then into society. So it kind of parallels, and it makes a neat way to explain it. And what civilization is when you get a corrupted influence on society. And it's typically pushed by, within a society, individuals that are betaken by the three, we call them the three fires, the three evils of civilization, which are greed, hatred, and the big one, ignorance, just not knowing. And we seem to revel in knowing less and less now. People almost take a pride in how stupid they are. But generally, the more you know, the better. Anyway, greed, hatred, ignorance will set in to a society, and that society soon becomes civilized. And an analogy I came up with talking to this patient the other day is you could think of civilization happening to a society the same way a healthy individual, a healthy and happy, normal human being becomes civilized, and they end up less healthy, less happy, obese, and diabetes, and cancers, and strokes, and heart attacks, and anxiety, and depression, and all these diseases of civilization, as they're called, are sometimes referred to as diseases of affluence. That's just, I think, anthropological apologists trying to get off the mark here. But civilization will take an otherwise normal, healthy, happy human being and civilize them. They live shorter lives. They live with infirmaments, and they're on 12 different medications by age 65, which in theory should be just, middle age. And they end up sicker and less happy because of being civilized. So the civilizing process on a society can be likened to the civilizing process on an individual. It goes all the way down to the individual level. If we follow our doctors and our healthcare advice, we start out right in school, or even with our children before grade school. So instead of nursing and breastfeeding the child, which is natural, and of course there's always exceptions. I'm not talking about the exceptions where the mother is unable to nurse due to an accident or something. But when the mother is not nursing due to choice, lifestyle choices, or the doctors have talked her into thinking that formula somehow is better than breast milk, which is categorically untrue, then we start them out right away on ultra-processed foods and food products and things that are not food. So their nourishment goes straight out. We get them to school, and school lunches. Have you seen what school lunches consist of? 90% carbohydrates, always pastas and breads and cookies and crackers, and there's always something sweet there, and there's always a little jug of milk to get them stuck on those subpar dairy proteins, which cause a lot of allergies and issues in children. It's a mucogenic, so a lot of mucus. All the sugars make them euphoric and then lethargic in turns. So anyway, we shoot their nourishment right away. Then we sit them in desks, no more recess, so their movement is shot. So by the time they hit third grade, their nourishment and movement is totally off the rails. So now they're well on their way to being civilized. And then we mess up their restoration periods. There's no longer time for daydreaming because they're addicted to screens. So you get that constant dopamine flush. Dopamine goes up. Then they take the screens away for a little bit by a frustrated parent. Can't get them to do anything. Then they throw a tantrum. And then they go back on the screens. Or parents use the screens as distractions. And not to be this guy, but when I was little, we didn't have these things. The school lunches were actually pretty good. We actually had cooks in the kitchen at the elementary school where I went, making food. Like they would defrost the pizzas, and ironically, the pizza is what everybody liked the most, and it was the most processed of the foods. Shows the addictive nature of these things. But we went outside. We had morning recess, after lunch recess, afternoon recess, and anytime we were getting on the teacher's nerves, we had a spontaneous recess. We did gym 4 days a week. We had music and art 4 days a week. They just worked those into the day. So we had pretty good nourishment, although most of us brought our lunch. We had morning snacks. We got outside to play, and then we had nap time in the middle of the day. Teachers say, get your carpet. We had little squares of carpet we all brought, and we would just lay out on the floor. She turned the lights down a little bit, and we just lay there and have to be quiet. You didn't have to sleep. You could daydream or whatever, but they knew the importance of taking that daily quiet time. Okay? Our hygiene today, and hygiene in the Uncivilized Vitality just stands for self-care, right? How you stay clean. Now we use industrial solvents and detergents and a bunch of other chemicals to stay healthy and clean, and it's not necessary. We're a self-cleaning organism for the most part. If you're putting the proper food in, movement and restoration, your hygiene can take care of itself. Dry brushing, we avoid dirt and exposure to nature more than ever before. When I was a little kid, washed our hands after we went to the bathroom, and then provided we remembered. But after we were outside all day, you get your bath at the end of the day and you'd wash off just layers of dust and dirt. And my immune system is pretty good, I think, directly as a result of it. There's lots of studies about over sanitizing when children are young and not giving their immune system a chance to combat the dust and the dirt and the little mini microbes that we're supposed to practice on. Anyway, we'll come back to that later. The fifth one that civilization civilizes right out of us, ironically, is our sense of community. There are more people on the planet now than there ever have been. I'm in my 50s. We're over 8 billion people now. And when I was in elementary school in the 70s, there were less than, there's around 3.5 billion. It's doubled, more than doubled in that time, which is frightening. We'll talk about the doubling rate of populations at some other point. I don't know if that applies to humans, but we'll talk about that. But our sense of community, which comes from the Latin communus, which means the shared or public space. And our sense of community is completely deficient now, almost non-existent, because we're all on our phones. I work at a university, and it's shocking to me now when I go in the halls how quiet the university is. I think no one's there. I'll go out in the hall. There's 20 students, 30 students waiting to be let into a class, waiting on their professor to open the door. And they're all in the hall, and every one of them's down on their screen. There's no talking, there's no interaction. It's crazy. But our sense of community is gone. These 5 areas in my program are referred to as the vital paths because they are vital pertaining to life. You need proper movement, like a human. You need human nourishment. You need proper periods of restoration, both mentally, physically, and emotionally, or spiritually. And you got to take care of yourself, and we need a sense of community with others. So as civilization has weakened the individual, the individual unit, that's trickled all the way up. We have poor family structures, we have poor community interactions. Our cultures have been, instead of respected and integrated and tolerated. We've eliminated the idea of individual culture, and our societies have suffered as a result. So overall, civilization is a corrupting process. It's typically driven by greed, hatred, and ignorance. And just like an ecosystem, if a cell suffers, the tissue suffers, the organism suffers, the ecosystem suffer. And if you were to attack an ecosystem by taking out like all of the grasses, or a lot of times people want to eliminate all the bugs like mosquitoes. If you magically took all the mosquitoes out of an ecosystem, the ecosystem would collapse. They're annoying as hell, but they're necessary because there are things that eat the mosquitoes and things that eat the things that eat the mosquitoes. And then, it's all intertwined. One can't exist without the other. So by becoming over-civilized, we are producing, it's corrupted all the way back down to sick individuals. Started with these three. The way out of it, the way back, is looking back to move forward. We look back to pre-civilized times and how did we stay healthy and happy despite these three influences. We had a strong sense of community, personal hygiene. We had proper restoration, movement, and nourishment. 5 vital paths. So there, that was about as quick as I could sum up the Uncivilized Vitality program. If you're interested, you can purchase my books soon. Volume 2 will be out, and then Volume 3 next fall on Amazon. You can swing by the clinic, some of the local bookstores here, and pick up a signed copy. And like I've told everybody, that way, if I get hit by a pickle truck, you can immediately go to eBay and double your investment in the book. All proceeds from the book go to supporting the Uncivilized Living Foundation, which is a charity I've set up to introduce this method to people that aren't able to maybe afford, or it's not possible for them to experience some of the teachings, because the other big part of the Uncivilized Vitality is I take people out camping. So we go out in the woods and experience, even for a small bit, what it's like to be a pre-civilized human being and live without the trappings of civilization in more normalized replications of human societies. Basically camping, campaigning, adventures, just being out in nature, living up to our primary directive, which is living according to nature is best, right? Follow these vital paths. So the charity is set up to help groups or small groups or people, individuals that can't afford to do that, or maybe you have a family with a child with special needs, or is differently abled and are unable to take them camping. I wouldn't want them to miss the opportunity to get out in the outdoors. So that's why we set the charity up. So any sales or proceeds from the book, any proceeds from our tools like the ADC knife, the coming soon belt knife and axe in 2024, and subscribing and liking the YouTube channel. So those are the revenue streams for the charity to keep that going. So we'd super appreciate any help there. And if this is of any interest to you at all, you want to learn more about it, you like these early morning rants, just leave a comment below and I will try to address that. That's it.